Good always wins. Pozi woke up with his entire face buried in the sand. Where was he? How did he get here? After shaking off his initial shock, he began to apply what he remembered from his scout training at school. Following a few hours of exploration, he realized he was on an island and searched for a place to shelter before dark. After a night spent among the bushes, the rumbling in his stomach grew louder, and he began to search the trees for fruit. The red apples that seemed just a handful away would move further up, as if they were running away from him. Every time he failed to reach the apples, he would hear a laugh, a cackle. "Who's there? Hey, is someone there?" he said. But there was no answer. When the sun reached its peak, his thirst had become unbearable. Pozi was overjoyed when he found the river in the middle of the forest. At least now he had water to drink. However, as he filled his palms with water and brought them to his mouth, the water in his hands would turn to mud. He tried several times, but the result was the same. And again, the same infuriating laugh. This time, closer. "Hey, how is the water turning to mud? Where is this place?" he said. Again, there was no sound. He couldn't eat. He was exhausted from thirst and heat, and his energy was dwindling. He let his body fall into the shade of the first tree he found. As he looked at the sea, about to burst into tears of helplessness, what did he see? A huge ship, and it was very close. He shouted on one hand and waved at the ship non-stop on the other. "I'm here. Help! Hey, look over here. I'm here." Despite his continuous waving and jumping, he realized no one was seeing him. Had he become invisible? He could no longer bear it. He began to cry helplessly in the face of all that was happening. As his tears mixed with the soil, he heard that terrifying laugh once more. Enough! Is this a joke? Our beautiful fairy, Linda, who had been watching all of this with great patience, could no longer stand by and watch what the evil-hearted witches were doing to Pozi. Since one of the strictest rules of the fairy kingdom was not to appear directly to humans, our fairy Linda decided to help Pozi without being seen. First, Pozi needed to eat. She dropped 3 or 4 apples on Pozi's head from the top of the tree he was lying under. Seeing his energy slightly restored, our good-hearted fairy Linda thought about how to rescue him from this island, while also trying to get him a source of clean water that the witches couldn't reach. Meanwhile, the Queen of the Fairies, Seraphina, had already whispered magical words to bring our little friend safely to the land where humans lived, and had created a boat. This magical boat could control itself, adjusting its own rudder and sails. Now, the only problem was how to get Pozi to it without being seen. The clever queen came up with the idea of starting a small fire. A tiny fire made from the harmful weeds in their forest would create smoke, attract Pozi's attention, and allow him to see the boat she had just created. However, to prevent this, the evil-hearted witches began to make it rain, using all their magical powers. In this situation, Pozi wouldn't see the fire started by Queen Seraphina, and he would have to take shelter somewhere, feeding the witches with his fear. Both sides had to display their immense powers for our little friend in this long-standing struggle. On one side, the fairies, who strive for the well-being and happiness of every living creature in nature. On the other, the witches, who feed on the fears of all animals and harm plants. This battle in the clouds lasted for hours. As always, goodness won. After this victory, our kind-hearted fairies were able to get Pozi's attention and guide him towards the boat's location. As the boat he boarded with joy and excitement began to move on its own, he thought that none of this was real, that he was just having a bad nightmare. When he approached the harbor, he was already waving at the police officers standing on the shore. He started to cry with happiness. As soon as he stepped onto the pier, he hugged the first person who came before him. Son, where did you come from? How did you get here? Are you Are you the missing Pozi monker? Pozi tearfully nodded his head in affirmation. How did you get here then? Where were you? When he turned around to show them the boat that had brought him ashore, Pozi saw that it wasn't there.